After this video, you will know how to visualize triads on the fretboard. It will unlock the forbidden diagonal, a shape that you've never seen before that will make visualizing these triads easy and accessible. I promise you, you've been taught this concept all wrong, and it's really simple. So let's go. We're going to start by looking at how triads are taught in institutions like Berkeley, Juilliard, New School. It's all relying on what's called the horizontal approach. The horizontal approach is basically taking one string and learning how to go up and down it using the tools that we're talking about. Like triads are 1, 3, 5. 1, 3, 5. Now, that's actually super logical linearly. It turns the guitar into 6 parallel pianos. But the trouble is, once you start playing chords this way, here's a C major triad, here's the next inversion, and here's the next one. Now, this is not wrong, but it's complicated in the sense that there are no anchoring points. Think about how a pianist looks down at a piano. He's holding down C, E, G. So he has 2 fingers on E and G. And when he's trying to roll the chord to the next inversion, all he needs to do is move these 2 fingers visually to where these 2 were pressing, and then see how that note rolls up an octave. But when we try to do that on the fretboard, this E and C note go to entirely different new locations that are the same notes but not anchored on the fretboard in any way, right? If I go to roll this inversion to the next one, I have to study it like independent places, and it's all muscle memory with a lot of shifting. So this way is great for some things, but really bad to start out. So let's explore a different way, what people call the vertical approach. The vertical approach is best exemplified using caged. What is caged? It's a system of grips as opposed to arpeggio. So let's define grips. Here are the basic grips on guitar for major chords: C, A, G, E, D. Now, if I put them all in one key, I have what I call the C shape for C, the A shape for C, the G shape for C, the E shape for C, and the D shape for C. These shapes, these grips, are not pure arpeggios. One of them is. The C form is actually a C arpeggio, all in order, meaning 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3. That's a C arpeggio, G to E. But if I take a look at the A form, it's not a pure arpeggio, meaning I'm skipping some notes. At the bottom here, I have this power chord type thing on the bottom 4 strings. 5, 1, 5, 1. All of the other shapes other than the C form are going to have skipped notes. So to play an arpeggio through them, I have to add 2 notes per string to some of these shapes. So for instance, here on the A form, I have 2 options of how to do that. I can add the added note on the A string or on the D string. A string form, D string added form. So this is an imperfect system for visualizing triads because I'm not really able to access them harmonically. If I arpeggiate through the shapes, I get a mixture of power chord type structures and arpeggio type structures. So where does that leave us? Well, if I play 1 note per string arpeggios, I access the Let's get through the first diagonal shape. We're going to call it the root position diagonal. It's going to look like this. C, E, G, C, E, G. Now the first thing you want to notice is that it slices the guitar into 2 halves that repeat intervallically. I have 1, 3, 5, and then the next octave, 1, 3, 5. So this diagonal is very logical in that way. Now this allows me to roll chords in the same way that a pianist does. This is the first exercise I want you to do. Just play 3 adjacent strings and move through the inversions. Root position, first inversion, second inversion, root position. Now this is the root position diagonal, but every diagonal has all the inversions in it. You can figure out a way to play it as an arpeggio. as chords, or as double stops, or as sequences. You can also travel it as open triads in any of the diagonals just by skipping every other string, meaning E, D, B is one open triad, and A, G, E is the other one, and that's true for every diagonal. Diagonal number 2 is going to be called the first inversion diagonal. I'm naming them after their starting points on the low E string, but they contain all the inversions. So here's a first inversion, second inversion, root position, first inversion. Now again, it slices the guitar into 2 3-string groups. 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. So to practice the first inversion diagonal, do the same thing. You can do it like a pianist, meaning rolling one note along the diagonal. As an arpeggio, as double stops, as open triads, as sequences. Now the last diagonal, the second inversion diagonal, is the easiest because it's just like a C form with G in the bass. Here is the form, rolling it. As double stops, as an arpeggio, as a sequence. Very, very easy to see. Now again, notice that the interval patterns repeat, meaning 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3. Another thing to notice is that every diagonal combines 2 adjacent caged shapes. So here is the G form with the root position into the A form. Here is the D form into the E form. Here's the C form into the D form. So if I know caged on the guitar, I have 5 slices. And if I know the diagonals, the forbidden diagonals, I have 3 motions through them to connect every 2 pieces. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, those are 3 major shapes. Let's add 3 more by turning it into minor. So the root position minor diagonal looks like this. It's the G minor form into the A minor form. If you're unfamiliar with cage, you can just see it as the C major with a lowered third. Same idea through it. I'm gonna roll the chords. You can do all the exercises we did with the major. I'm gonna just move on to save time. The next shape is the minor first inversion. Now notice, since the first inversion starts on the third, I have to compensate on the bottom, which is visually challenging. So here's the first half of this diagonal. C minor, first inversion. Flat 3, 5, root, flat 3, 5, root. Here's the triad exercise, rolling. Now here's that C major shape. I'm turning it into C minor. So thinking about the cage shapes that the minor diagonals connect, the root position connects the G minor form with the A minor form. The first inversion connects the D minor form with the E minor form. The second inversion connects the C minor form with the D minor form. Now there are 2 more types of triads, the first of which is very easy. Augmented. Why is it easy? Well, it's symmetric. If I see C major, I just sharpen its 5th. So here's C major, C augmented. Okay, 1, 3, sharp 5. Now the next point is 1, 3, sharp 5, rolling. Now it's easy because that's a symmetrical triad, so the fingerings repeat identically. The intervals don't. It's 3, sharp 5, 1, 3, sharp 5, 1. And here here it's a little bit confusing because of the orientation to the bottom note, meaning it starts on the sharp 5. So if this was your C form, remember that's the 5th, so you sharpen the bottom note. Sharp 5, 1, 3. Cool. So these are 3 more diagonals, but it's really just one shape. So right now we have 3 for major, 3 for minor, 1 for augmented. Now here's the doozy, diminished triads. I have surveyed every one of my students and asked them to perform diminished triads for me. Even the very good jazz players cannot do it. Guitar players, even the good ones, know diminished 7 arpeggios. And some of them that play gypsy jazz and stuff like that know minor 7 flat 5s. They know things that contain diminished triads, but they don't have control over diminished triads. Now, here are the diagonals for diminished triads. If I take minor, I just flatten its 5th. 1, flat 3, flat 5. 1, flat 3, flat 5. Rolling. First inversion minor. Flat 3, 5, root. I flatten the 5th, flat 3, flat 5, root. Same thing on top. Rolling. Now here I have 5th, root, flat 3. So I flatten the bottom note. Flat 5, root, flat 3. Capiche? Cool. You might think this is a crazy shape. I've never seen it before. Not true. Think about G7, just like basic bitch chords right here. The middle 4 notes of that G7, if I take off G from the bottom and the top, are this. What is that? That's a B diminished triad on this diagonal without B and F. So if I roll this one, that's the shape I get. How about this G7? If I take off the G, this is a B diminished triad on this diagonal. How about this real basic bitch chord? I take off the G. So just from knowing basic chords, I'm almost there. It's just about connecting that concept in your mind. A really good exercise is what I call the Django Reinhardt suspension. If you just go from C major to C diminished. Check this out. Here's my first shape. All I got to do is flatten the 3rd and the 5th and keep the root. So C major, C diminished, back. 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 Next inversion. One of the biggest advantages of learning things this way is the ability to extend the sound that you're on. So if I'm just playing a pop tune and I'm sitting on a C chord and I'm just kind of like going up the neck, now I can make my way down these diagonals in a connected way, just like a pianist comps. When you look at Paul McCartney playing piano, he's not a genius at it, but he's always able to play in a really pleasing way where the sounds kind of can go up and down freely. It's this improvisation that's built into your hands. Another thing you can do is seeing it like a jazz player using upper structure chords. What's the idea? If I have a C major 7 and I know my diagonal triads, I can recognize that what's really happening here is an E minor triad with C in the bass. Really, this is all a part of this E minor diagonal. So if I'm playing a 2-5-1 that goes here, I can extend the sound of that E minor. But I can do it with any chord. This D minor is an F major with D in the bass. So I can run this diagonal on that D root. That G7 is a B diminished with G in the bass. So if I'm playing a 2-5-1, I can be in this kind of world of arpeggiating F major. The hidden chords, the chords inside the chords. That's one advantage. Now let's take a look at Radiohead's Creep to see how we can use this kind of substitution thinking. The first version of it, the easiest to digest, would be just following the chords on the page. C major, E7, F major, F minor. Now what we're going to do is roll the chords just triadically, C, E, F, F minor, but we're going to voice lead, meaning find the inversions that are next to each other. So Creep, do 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 dee, ba dee do 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 do, ba dee do do dee do, da dee dee do dee. Dee dee do dee do do do, do 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 do, do 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 dee do, dee dee do dee do. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is add some substitutions. So the first thing you can do is always add augmented in place of dominant chords from the same root. So that's the easiest way to substitute because you don't have to think about a distance from the interval, like build a chord from its third. It's from the root. So E7 is E augmented instead. So check this out. Do dee dee do do dee, do dee dee do do do. Da da do dee do, da da do dee do, da da da. Okay, that's pretty cool. Now we're going to increase the complexity here. The next thing we're going to do is in place of that E7, we're going to use a diminished triad from the third of E, major third of E. So it's G sharp diminished. Why? Well, this E7, like the G7 in the key of C we mentioned before, it has a chord on its inside. This E7 has this diminished triad. That's a G sharp diminished triad. G sharp diminished triad on an E root is a sound we call E7. So by using that diminished triad, I'm really using the active part of the E7 without the root, the 3, 5, and flat 7 of that E. Check out the sound on Creep. Ba-da-da-do-do-dee, da-da-da-da-do, da-da-da-do-dee-do, do-da-do-da-do. All right, now the last level of complexity is using diminished in place of a minor chord. So this works for Dorian and melodic minor, but instead of that F minor, I can always use a diminished triad from its 6th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, natural 6 is D. D diminished triad in place of that F minor. Why? Well, it gives me this, here's the triad, minor 6 sound without a root. It's a substitution. So now, in my mind, I'm playing C, G sharp diminished triad, F major, D diminished triad. Let's hear it. Ba-da-da-do-do-dee, do-do-do-do, do-da-da-do-dee-do, do-da-do-dee-do, do-da-da, do-da-da-do-do-do, da-da-da. So this is gonna make you a harmonic fucking genius, right? This diagonal, it's beautiful, it's great, and it simplifies it. All you gotta do is memorize 10 shapes. 3 minor, 3 major, 1 augmented, 3 diminished. That's it. That's the game. We have a ton of stuff about this on our Patreon. We have a lot of other lessons there. Please join us there. I guarantee it's worth your time and your money. Like, subscribe, share, do all the things, and we'll see you next time.
More than two, more than two, more than two. Mwah!